Tav Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top. We learned previously that Shmuel holds that Ein Kiddush Ela B'Makom Suda. That Kiddush on Leil Shabbos has to be made B'Makom Suda. Kiddush in the daytime has to be made B'Makom Suda. That he makes Kiddush, he has to have the Suda in that place. So Zok the Gemara Savramino, the Talmidim thought to say Hanamil L'Bayis L'Bayis. That when we say b'makom suda, that means that you can't have kiddush in one place and the suda in a different house. That kiddush can't be in one house and the suda in a different house. However, but if it's in one room and a different room in the same house, there's not a chasar, it's not a problem. That is considered b'makom suda. However, Amalu Rabbanan Batachlifa, he said, no, Zimin Segin, Havakim Nekam Shmuel, I would stand in front of Shmuel, V'nachis Me'igr L'Ara V'Hara Makanish. He would go down from the upper level, from literally the roof, but from the upper level of the house, and to the lower level, where the meal was, where the dining room was, and he would make Kiddush. He wouldn't make Kiddush upstairs and come downstairs for the meal. He would make Davka the Kiddush in the same room as the meal was. So you see that Kiddush B'Makom Suda doesn't mean only that to exclude from one house to a different house. It has to be even in the same room. In the same room, it has to be, you have to make the Kiddush in the same room as the meal. Taisa says, however, but from one corner to a different corner of the same room, and that's considered B'Makom Suda, but it can't be in a different room. So, in order to say it's Kiddush B'Makom Suda, that your Yaitza, the Kiddush, it has to be in the same room. Once he's already has a Kiddush B'Makom Suda, he has a Kiddush and he eats over there in that place, then he's Yaitza Kiddush, and then he can eat elsewhere. He also holds that Kiddush has to be B'Makom Suda. He also holds the same halacha. The Rav Huna, the Kaddish, he made Kiddush v'yisakar le'shraya. He made Kiddush, and then the light was extinguished. V'ayla le'lamone lebei gane the Rabba Brain, and then he took his utensils, he took his kaleb to the chuppah house of Rabbi, his son, Davishraga, where there was a lamp burning, v'kadesh v'toim midi, and then he made Kiddush again, and he ate. Alma kasav and Kiddush al b'makom suda. So the fact that he made Kiddush again, then you see that he holds that Kiddush has to be Makom Suda. So you see that he already made Kiddush, Isakar Shraga, the light was extinguished, he went to the different room, he made Kiddush again. Rabba also holds en Kiddush B'Makom Suda. Abai said, when I was learning by Mar, the master Rabba, Ki Hava Mekadesh, and we made Kiddush, Omerlan, he would say to us, to the Talmidim, to imu midi, taste something, eat something. So to imu midi, Dilma adazlisa le'oshbiza, because maybe from the time you leave here and you go back to where you're staying, where your ushpiza is, where you're lodging house, where you're staying, Misakal Shraga, the light over there in the area of the dining area in your ushpiza will be extinguished. By the time you get there, the light will go out. And then, if that's the case, you won't be able to make over there have Kiddush but Makom Achila. And your Kiddush will not be in the place where you eat. Because, meaning, what's the pshat? Over there, if the light goes out, so the way the Mordechai learns it is, if the light goes out, that means is that you won't be able to have the Suda, because the Suda has to be b'makam ner. So therefore, you won't have a Suda, and therefore you won't be Yoitza Kiddush. And therefore, you have to eat over here, that the Kiddush that you hear over here should be Kiddush b'makam Suda. That's one way of learning it. The Rosh doesn't learn that way. He said, because the chashash is maybe you'll go back to your shpiza, you'll go back to your lodging, and there won't be a light over there, meaning, and therefore you won't have a suit over there, you won't want to eat over there, or you won't be able to eat over there. And there, if you go to another place, you perhaps won't find any wine, as Taisa says. So therefore, you will be in a place where the place where you're going to eat, you won't be able to eat there. And you might go to another place, either you won't have a Suda, or you might go to another place where there's no wine, so you won't have kiddush b'malkum suda. And the Gemara continues, and you're not going to be yosef with the kiddush that you heard over here if you don't eat. Then kiddush l'malkum suda, because kiddush has to be malkum suda, so you must eat. You have to eat something, at least the minimum that constitutes a suda, even if it's not the entire Shabbos meal. The minimum that constitutes a suda, you must eat here. So you have yoytze kiddush malkum suda, and then when you go to your lodgings, even if the light is extinguished, and even if you can't find wine in another place, or you're not able to eat in the place where where you originally were in your lodging because there's no light. Whatever the case may be, you're already yaitz kiddush malkum suda. So when you go there, you will be able to you're yaitz already. And if you have a suda in another place without wine, you're already yaitz. If you don't have a suda, then you're already yaitz your suda over here. The Meforshim are bothered. Why wasn't there concern that you'll go to your lodging, the light will be extinguished, you won't be able to eat the suda, and you won't have a suda? Why wasn't the point that you have to eat the suda here because you might not have a suda there? Well, if we're concerned that the light will go out and therefore you won't be able to eat the suda, then why wasn't the emphasis eat the suda here to be yaitz of the suda? Taisus explains the suda b'diavad they could make up the shalish sudas for the next day. But they have to be yaitz kiddush, and kiddush needs malkum suda, so therefore he told him to eat over here. Frek the Gemara, is that true? The Rabbah holds, like Shmuel, that ain't kiddush al malkum suda. I v'hamar Abaye kol mili damar hava v'kira. He said all of what Rabbah how he used to conduct himself, that was according to Rabbah. He went, if there's a machlokes Rav and Shmuel, he followed the halach of Rav. Lebar mahanet las Dovid Shmuel, except with these three cases where he held like Shmuel. What are these three cases? Matir mi beged lebeged. If there's tzitzis on one beged, and now he wants to wear a different beged, you can remove the tzitzis from one beged and fasten it to the second beged so that you'll have tzitzis on this other beged. So there Shmuel says that's what the Rav holds, that's a bizayon for the first beged to remove the tzitzis and take it off and remove it then and put it on a different beged. He says it's also, Shmuel says it's moter. Umadlik, in the second halach is madlik in miner lener. You can light Hanukkah candles, Hanukkah lit from one directly, you can light it to the other one. You can light from one Hanukkah candle to the other Hanukkah candle. But Rav says that that's also. The third halacha is halacha Rav Shimon begrera. That the halacha is like Rav Shimon begrera. Rav Shimon holds on Shabbos that a davar shein miskaven is muter. If a person didn't have intent for an outcome, as long as it's not a psik reisha, as long as it's not inevitable. If he did not have intent for an outcome that it's malach, it's muter. So therefore, he holds that. He holds like Rav Shimon begrera by the case of dragging. The son of Rav Shimon Omer geirara mita kisei v'safsal b'Shabbos. A person can drag a chair on the ground on Shabbos. As long as his intent is not to make a charitz. If he makes a furrow, if he makes a charitz, so if it's in a plowable area, plantable area, that's considered plowing. It's malacha plowing in the house. It's considered baina. So even if he's making a charitz, but as long as he's not intending to make a charitz, he's not mischavet, and it's not a psik reisha, then Shmuel says along like Rav Shimon that it's muter. But Rav holds like Rav Yehuda that it's also. So now these are the three cases that he followed like Shmuel. But otherwise Rabbah held like Rav. So if that's the case, then why would he say like here, like Shmuel, that en kiddush malkum suda? Rav argues with Shmuel, and he holds you don't need kiddush malkum suda. So why would we say over here that he followed Shmuel? More answers, kichumra the Rav hava ovid, kikula the Rav loy hava ovid. When we said he followed Rav, except for these three cases, what he's talking about is he's talking about that the chumras of Rav. He followed the chumras of Rav. Except in these three cases where Rav was machmir, he followed Shmuel to be mekel. He was mekel like Shmuel. But otherwise, where it's machlokes Rav and Shmuel, and Rav is machmir, he followed Rav. But Kikul the Rav Loyavet, but he didn't necessarily follow the Kulas. Now, this case, what we're discussing, this case under discussion is a Kula, is where Rav is Mekel, and he says you don't need Kiddush b'Malkum Suda. And Shmuel is Machmir, and he says you do need Kiddush b'Malkum Suda. So in this case, we say that in such a case, he would follow Shmuel. It's not inconsistent because this is a case where Shmuel is Machmir. The Rashbam says, even though we learned in Erevin that if a person follows the chumras of different paiskim, of different rabbonim, then it's considered to be a shlit. It's considered to be something that looks down upon, and he should not follow the chumras of different authorities. And here, L'chera, Rav is following the chumrah of Rav, and he's also following the chumras of Shmuel. The Gemara Erevin says the person should follow this one paisik with his chumras and kulas, but it explains the Rashbam that's only when they soiser each other, meaning the svaras, what's underlining the psak, would be soiser each other. So to do like a chumra in one, where if you follow that same svara, it should lead to a kula in a different case, and you're not making in that case, that's where it's looked down upon. But not when they're independent halachas, they're independent of each other. Another shita we had Rav who held that in Kiddush b'Malkum Suda, that you don't need Kiddush b'Malkum Suda, and Shmuel holds no, in Kiddush Ela b'Malkum Suda. But they both held that in the case where the shamas is making Kiddush in shul, and when you come home, they both hold that Kedei Yayin lo yotza, that you're not yotza the Bor Priya Gofen, and as far as the Birchas HaNenen is concerned, when you come home, you have to make a different Birchas HaNenen. But Rav Yochanan Omar, Af Yedei Yayin Nami Yotza, he says you're also yotza your chiyuv of Bor Priya Gofen. He says that if he had kavana to be yotza the Birchas HaNenen, and if he did drink from the wine in shul, then when he comes home, he doesn't have to make another Bori Priya Gofen. V'az Rav Yechon l'tamei, and Rav Yechon is l'tamei, the Omer Rav Chanan bar Abai Amar Rav Pedas Amar Rabbi Yechanan Echad Shinu Yayin, where there's a difference in wine. They bring out, he's drinking one kind of wine, they bring out another barrel of wine, another bottle of wine, a different type of wine. So Echad Shinu Yayin, and V'echad Shinu Mokayim, and even if there's a different place, he went to a different place, Ain't Tzarech Levarach. You don't have to make another bracha. You are yotze, you don't have to make another bracha. Now, as is pointed out to Shaim Painter, you don't have to make another Bori Priya Gofen. There are cases where you might have to make for the Shinu Yayin, for the different type of wine, if it's a better type of wine, under certain circumstances, you might have to make a bracha, atoy v'hameitiv, but you don't have to make a Birchas HaNenen, even if you change the place. Rav Yochanan argues in Rav and Shmuel, and he says that even if there's Shinu Makam, you don't have to make another Bori Priya Gofen. So as the Rishonim speak out, that this is talking in a case where he had kavana, and he drank some of the wine. And then if you had kavana, then if he goes to a different place, Rav Yochanan holds that you don't have to make another bracha. So therefore, there's no hesed hadas, and you don't have to make another bracha. Interesting to put a note, though. However, in the case we had before about Kiddush b'Malkum Suda, so over there we said that even though at the time of Kiddush they didn't have intent to be yotze the Kiddush, there was no intent to be yotze the Kiddush at the time that we made as Kiddush, because he said in the case was then when Rabbah made Kiddush, then he said, after the fact, he said to the Talmidim, Timu Midi, because Dilma Arizalo Shpiza Misakal Shraga. And therefore, you won't be able to have Kiddush Malkum Suda. So meaning over there, as far as Kiddush Malkum Suda goes, even though there was no intent to be Yotze Kiddush Malkum Suda, so the Taz is medayik from this case in the Gemara that even though at the time of the Kiddush there was no intent to be Yotze Kiddush Malkum Suda, but if after the fact Lamaisa they heard the Kiddush and they ate, you're Yotze. But what we're talking about in this context is when he had kavanah to be Yotze the Bori Priyagof, and he tasted from the wine. Even if he goes home, Rav Yochanan says you don't have to make another bracha. If a person changes his location, you have to make a bracha. A different bottle of wine, you don't have to make another Bori Priyagof. Different type of wine. But if you change the place, you do have to make another bracha. So tiyufta Rav Yochanan, tiyufta. It's a tiyufta Rav Yochanan, and therefore that's not the halacha. Ashini Malkaim, you do have to make another bracha.